Madam Chair, we're live on YouTube.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We are now reconvening the Board of Governors meeting, which started yesterday. For those in the public and the media watching via YouTube, again, welcome and good morning back into our session. We are now going to move into committee sessions of the board. For our new members, and as a reminder for everyone, again, while committee members are the only ones that are permitted to vote during their respective committee sessions, we encourage all board members to engage in the dialogue and discussion. And then later in the meeting, we return to full board mode to consider final approval of the actions that are recommended by all of the committees over the course of yesterday and today. So please stay engaged and speak up throughout the committee meetings if you have any questions. Let's see, I am going to turn first to the Governance and Leadership Committee. And I will, at this point, turn the virtual gavel over to Chairman Sam Smith for Governance and Leadership. Sam?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. As everybody knows, this committee meeting will be about student trustees. So the first order of business, I'd like Charissa to call the roll of the Governance and Leadership Committee.
Surely. Chair Smith.
Here.
Senator Martin.
Here.
Senator Schwank.
Here.
Governor Mazur. And Chair Shapira.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So the committee is focused on ensuring the best practices in executive management and governance of the system and its universities. Our role is to provide policy oversight regarding the effective distribution of authority, accountability, and responsibility among the Board of Governors, councils of trustees, the chancellor, and the presidents. One of our most important duties, similar to what we just did a month ago, within the last month, where we're dealing with appointment of student trustees of the Board of Governors, is we are now have the authority to appoint the student trustees to our universities, to their respective councils of trustees. The universities have worked with the Chancellor's Office to develop and utilize a recruiting process to identify and vet potential candidates. Much of that was already in place because historically the schools made recommendations even to the governor's office whenever that process was taking place. So it's not something new to them. It's a process that's always been driven at the local level. And frankly, it should be there because they're the people that know their students best. In the agenda packet, starting on page 29, is information regarding two student trustees that we will consider today. You have available to you their resumes, their letters of support from their respective presidents. And in serving as a university trustee myself, I can tell you that I believe all the schools take this process very seriously. They know how valuable it is to get the right quality of student to fill the students that are really engaged and ready to be a part of that council of trustees, just like our student trustees at the Board of Governors level. How they interact with us, same thing at the council of trustees level. In order to kind of produce an introduction of these candidates, I'm going to ask each of the presidents to say a few words about their student trustee candidate. And then without objection, we will vote on them in one motion at the conclusion of their introduction. So we'll begin with Evan Santos at Kutztown, and I'll ask President Hawkins to say a few words about that appointment.
Thanks so much. And I'm just delighted to introduce Evan Santos from Kutztown University. Evan is a public relations major and is minoring in five additional disciplines. He is an exceptional student, and among his many accomplishments and activities, he serves as student president of the honors program. He works on campus as an admissions tour guide, as a sports information student assistant, and serves as a peer mentor. While growing up, Evan spent much time on campus, and several family members are alumni. Few know the community, region, and history and culture of the university more than Evan Santos. He is a bright, thoughtful, articulate, caring, and engaged young man, and will serve his fellow students and our community as a whole well as a member of our Council of Trustees. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Evan Santos.
Thank you, President Hawkinson. Appreciate that introduction. The second appointment that we have before us is Julia Berson from Bloomsburg, and I will ask President Hanna to say a few words about that appointment.
Thank you, Governor Smith. Good morning, everyone. I have the honor of introducing Julia Berson to you. Julia is a rising junior at Bloomsburg. She is a Dean's List student. She's a native of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and graduated from Liberty High School. She's also on the women's volleyball team at Bloomsburg, and her brother Jared is on the men's baseball team. The entire Berson family is dedicated to Bloomsburg, and my introduction to Julia, I was beyond impressed with her poise and maturity. So I'm delighted to introduce her to you and look forward to having her as a member of the Bloomsburg University Council of Trustees.
Thank you, President Hanna. And certainly to the committee and to the other members of the Board of Governors, obviously we put great weight in the recommendation of the president and their individual university, as I said before, because they know these students the best. There's no way that we can really know them that well, just not being next to them on a regular basis. But in spite of that trust we have in our presidents, there is some additional vetting process that takes place at the university. The OOC, the Chancellor's Office staff, they review the information provided by the universities. And in conducting this review, they also support these nominations. So as such, may I have a motion that the committee recommends that the Board of Governors hereby appoints Julia Berson, Bloomsburg University, and Evan Santos, Kutztown University, to their respective universities' councils of trustees.
So moved.
May I have a second? Thank you, Senator Schwank.
Second.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on these two proposed appointees?
Mr. Chairman,
Please go.
thank you. First, congratulations to these two students. Listening to your resume, you sound like you'll be fantastic additions to your Council of Trustees. And I would just note, even as a member of the Senate, if I understand you right, Chairman Smith, the process now, the nominations do not go to the state Senate for approval before the governor. I heartily approve that, even as a state senator, because it speeds up the process. And I know for the presidents, I see President Hawkinson nodding his head. He's asked me this so many times as to how we can make this, his board at council operate more efficiently and effectively by promptly appointing people. So this is a good thing in action, another good step. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schwank. Yes, as part of Act 50 of 2020, similar to what we do now with our Board of Governors student trustees, the process has been expedited. All of us at the Council of Trustees level have seen where you basically lost the availability of having that student on your Council of Trustees sometimes for the better part of a year, because it would got tied up into the other, appointments. And we appreciate the Senate's willingness and the governor's office willingness to cede some of that power, if you will, and make this process a whole lot smoother. So any other comment?
Yes,
questions?
Cindy has her hand up.
Oh, Cindy, Madam Chair.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Cindy will do. Thank you. I just want to, again, as Senator Schwank said, just comment on the stellar quality of these students. And I know they'll add immeasurably to their respective councils of trustees. So, and by the way, I was thinking, I'm not sure if I could handle, I could have handled 5 classes per semester, let alone 5 minors. So, that's really something. my serious comment is that I just want to point out that this is another example of the board and the system working in partnership with councils and with the legislature and with the governor's office to improve governance and leadership. This is a prime example. So, you know, when we talk about are we hitting our goals, we're working toward it, and this is that change in Act 50 is a big help in helping us exhibit better governance. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other discussion on the actual motion before us? Hearing none, may all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, those appointments will go to the full board later this afternoon in as we do a vote on all of the committee actions as resolution. But before we get to that, I think that we have Evan and Julia, correct, Randy?
Correct.
That are on the Zoom call today, and you're actually going to bring them in as a panelist so they can talk to us, correctly?
They are here.
Okay, so Julia, would you please say hello to us and anything else that you'd like to share?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me come on today. I just wanted to say that I'm super thankful for this opportunity to be a part of the Council of Trustees. And I've already learned so much from Bloomsburg's council, so I can't wait to get started in October. Well, start now, but it's at my first meeting in October. Thank you.
Good luck, Julia. Thank you very much. And now I'll turn to Evan. Would you please share a word or two with us?
Definitely. Thank you everyone for having me. I just wanted to send a special thanks to Senator Schwank. In December, she joined us with Senator David Argel for a civic discourse. And it was really enlightening, and I learned a lot being a moderator of it, how to respectfully disagree in today's society. And I think it's going to be something really important as I take on this new role, to be able to, you know, disagree with people, but, you know, find the common ground, find the solution that's the best for everyone. So I know she's a member of this committee. I want to thank her for doing that in December. And then I just want to thank Dr. Hawkinson and Toya Hayward out of the President's Office at Kutztown, and some incredible people, Dr. Schlegel and Dr. O'Brien, and Mr. Tim Hahn from our Office of Admissions. Just incredible what they do at Kutztown, and more importantly, they're incredible people, and I'm really lucky to be part of this community. I'm looking forward to this new role. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Evan. That what you just described is called governing. Seriously, we really do wish you, the two of you, well. I hope the experience is everything I know that it can be, both for you, where you learn some things, but believe it or not, usually the older folks on those council of trustees learn a lot from you guys as well as students. So the bar's high, the challenge is real, but it's rewarding, and it's something that'll, I believe, I was actually thinking we should almost give you a credit, you know, called credit for this or something, just because the learning experience is that deep in my mind, at least my experience at that council of trustees. So that concludes our business, Madam Chair, unless there's something I've missed. Randy, we're good?
You're good.
All right, then that concludes the Governance and Leadership Committee meeting, and that motion that was approved will be presented later this afternoon or this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Smith. We appreciate that. Okay, our next committee business is with the University Success Committee. And let me just remind everybody that we have discussed the appropriation allocation formula as part of the system redesign efforts. And then as part of redesign and financial sustainability, we froze the appropriation allocation to provide some stability while sustainability activities were occurring. So as we all know, 2020 was a bit of a turbulent year, and the board continued the freeze in light of the pandemic, and also the ongoing sustainability activities, and then the newly passed Act 50. So with yesterday's board approval of the integrations plans and with additional funds from the SERS savings and federal stimulus dollars, we're now actually at a good point in time to re-engage the work to update the funding formula and to provide some assistance to those universities who were impacted by the prior freeze. Let me now, with that, turn the gavel over to Governor Larry Skinner, who is the chair of the University Success Committee. And Larry, I know this is your the first time moderating this committee since you're newly, also relatively new to the board. So thank you very much for taking this very, very important position of leadership. And let me now turn the virtual gavel over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Good morning and welcome. I will ask Sharisa to do a roll call of the University Success Committee.
Sure, thank you. Chair Skinner,
Here,
Governor Weaver, Governor Gindelsberger,
Here.
Representative Roy, Secretary Jones.
Representative Roy is here.
I see you.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
here, sorry.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Jones,
Here.
Governor Yeomans,
Here.
Chair Shapira.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
thank you, Sharisa.
You're welcome.
We have a small but important agenda for today's committee meeting. First, I'd like to thank the Governor and the General Assembly for continuing to maintain our appropriation, as well as providing additional federal COVID relief funds to the system as much needed financial support for the students that we serve. Today's discussion is about our appropriation allocation and how we can continue to strategically finance activities in support of our students, our communities, affordability, and long-term sustainability. We have one item from Administration and Finance related to the appropriation, as well as additional information related to the results of the Chancellor and President's analysis of SERS pre-funding opportunities. Finally, I want to note that while federal funds do not require a board vote, we do anticipate that how those funds will be utilized will be brought to the board in October. This allows the team to engage with the appropriate parties for proper accounting, as well as engage in the strategic prioritization to enable student success. I would like to turn it over to Molly Mercer, the system CFO.
Thank you and good morning. I'd like to just start off and echo that we are very appreciative to receive both level state appropriation and the added one-time funding, which will make a significant difference as we look to fiscal 21 and 22. As Chairman Skinner noted, our one-time funds are under review, but we will be discussing them today as an informational item. It's very important that we use these one-time funds wisely, and so we want to take the appropriate time to enable a process to determine the best use of these funds. We will provide a further update on these in October as we reach final determinations in each of these areas. But before I review the appropriation distribution, which is our action item for today's meeting, Dan, I'd like to turn it over to you to speak broadly about the goals and objectives of our one-time funding.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Molly. Obviously, with the one-time funding, there are, Randy, why don't you go to the next slide? Actually, go one more even. There are two sources of one-time funding. I want to consider them together. There is the $25 million that's available to us this year, resulting from our prepayment of our SERS obligation. It's an action that the board took earlier this year. And then the one-time federal appropriation of $50 million for the current financial year. And again, echoing thanks to the administration, members of the General Assembly, and the coalition that came together around that investment. And we are very, very grateful for that indeed. So we're, and in presenting our thinking about the use of the one-time funding, I'm really presenting a framework, as Molly has already outlined, a sort of a framework for the expenditure of the funds, and we'll return in October with greater detail. So I'm going to run through goals for the use of one-time funding and then the principles that we're proposing to guide their investment. And then we'll present a putative distribution of the 75 million in a subsequent slide. So the goals, all of these components result from extensive conversation with the board, particularly around the use of SERS money, which itself was one-time funding. So goals and principles derived from those conversations, and with the executive leadership group, and with members of the General Assembly and the administration, who obviously in the consideration of one-time funding for the state system. So in terms of goals, there shouldn't be anything here to surprise us. Obviously, with one-time money, the idea is to advance all of our universities so that they can succeed, position themselves to succeed in the 21st century, and to pursue the goals that are outlined in our broader system redesign, improving our student success, ensuring our university success, and enabling us to achieve our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. So that's the first goal. The second is to ensure that our integrated universities are able to get off to a successful start, because their success is critical to the system's health overall, as well as to their regions and their students. To support our universities in their transition to sustainable operations. I'll come back to that in a bit. But as we move towards implement our sustainability policy requiring all of our universities to operate in a balanced budget way, that transition takes time, can be disruptive, and there are ways that we can ease that transition, whether through support of employees and try to minimize the impact on our employees, and in other ways. And finally, we wanted to throw in this this fourth point that with one-time funds and the way we're thinking about it, most of the funds are really used to support our employees, to invest in our employees, to invest in our people, to ensure that we're using the most current practices and ensuring that our students are able to succeed in all that they seek to do. And so we see this as a kind of an important opportunity to significantly invest in our talent. So let me go on to the second slide, and please chime in by raising your hand or just jumping in. So there's our goals, principles that we're proposing that the proposal be developed by proposals for use of one-time funding be developed by me in consultation with our executive leadership group, our presidents, with input from the board, obviously, that we fold in the kind of thinking about budgeting and progress reporting, that we fold it into our normal budget process, which means that that typically use of one-time funding would be presented to the board in July. This is a funny year because the money just materialized very recently, so we'll obviously take an additional few months to build a more detailed plan. But in future years, the expectation would be that one-time funding would be presented to the board in the kind of detail which was appropriate for an affirmation. That objectives of any one-time investment would have clearly articulated outcomes that would be measurable with the board-approved metrics and other leading indicators that make sense. We're anticipating investing in shovel-ready projects, if I can use a phrase from the Great Recession and the era funding that followed on, capable of a timely start. A good chunk of these one-time funds have a time limit on their use. And so it's important that we are investing in activities where there's already some energy at our universities and some leadership and some capability for a quick start. And critically, because these are one-time funds, it's essential that they not require ongoing funding for them to have some impact. Where projects are or initiatives are likely to have some long-term funding implications, we would expect that they would be associated with some kind of reasonable sustainability plan to ensure that they didn't draw down on our recurrent allocation. And then obviously reporting on progress, also to be folded into our existing practices. And so the expectation is that it would be a university use of these one-time funds, and virtually all the funds would flow to the universities, would be included in a comprehensive planning process that has been put in place over these last couple of years. So the objective, both in terms of the reporting and in terms of the development of budgets and reporting on progress, that it be folded into processes rather than develop whole new processes to satisfy the need. I'm going to draw a line there in case there are questions or comments before moving along to the pie chart. All right, let's move along to the pie chart. So this is a, there we go. Thanks, Randy. So this is a, again, this is a initial set of recommendations, which will go away and develop with the executive leadership group, obviously creating opportunities for plenty of board input, and come back in October with a more detailed plan. Let me go start with launching integrated universities and go counterclockwise around the wheel. Obviously, it's important for our integrated universities to be set up for success. And so we anticipate that an initial year's expenditure of $15 million is what is required to do that. So that's that category. The next, support transition to sustainable operations. So there's a couple of things in this bucket. As you'll see in the conversation that Molly is going to lead us through with respect to the allocation, we are going back to the allocation formula as was, and obviously by going back to the allocation formula, universities that have not yet achieved their sustainability goals will, are disadvantaged and are doing that. So we will use one-time funding in order to help them to sort of build a ramp for those institutions so that they are able to reach their sustainability goals without undue impact. And there are also funds built in into that so that we can mitigate impacts on our employees that result from the need to continue some additional adjustment in our employee complement and to support, for example, the kinds of things that we've been doing the past couple of years, retirement incentive, et cetera. Essential infrastructure, $10 million is the next slice in the wheel. That's includes a number of things. We've talked a great deal about a single student information system, which is important for ensuring that our students at any one of our universities can take courses at any other of our universities and thereby leverage the sort of great power of this great system in wholly new ways. So we have, since this conversation began a couple of years ago, contracted with a provider, and this enables us to get started this year. So that would be in the essential infrastructure category. There's been a lot of conversation, even since I think I interviewed here, Madam Chair, about the need to, market the state system, not so much the state system, but sort of to address at a more general way, to provide some supports so that we can sort of tell people about the quality of the education that's available at all of our universities, and and begin to demonstrate the power of public higher education in the state. So this sort of infrastructure money will also allow us to pursue that kind of marketing. Debt relief is a one-time need at a number of our universities, particularly in the integrating schools, particularly in the West, but also I guess in the Northeast, are in a situation where they have more debt. They have debt in residence halls, which is not easily repaid on the number of residents in those halls. And so debt relief helps them get more quickly to sustainable operations than they would otherwise without. Moving up to the orange. Workforce aligned programming is something that we've been pursuing with foundation philanthropic support over the last few years with some considerable success. And our universities are obviously also making tremendous strides in this area. My watch is telling me something I don't want to hear. This is an investment in the creation, in particular, of non-degree credentials and in partnership with employers and community colleges, and to pursue work that is already underway. And then these next two chunks I'll take together: student success and diversity, equity, inclusion. So $15 million together to really ensure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that students have, we improve access to our universities. We talk about things like dual enrollment programs and community college transfer initiatives. And of course, we just had a significant change in our policy yesterday. So access is a big deal. Student outcomes are super important. So are we doing everything we can to ensure that our students have the best support they can have when they're enrolled in our schools, whether that's through career services advising, et cetera. And then to ensure that our universities are affordable, we've done a lot of work across the universities with respect of implementation of emergency aid practices that have shown nationally to be quite successful in helping to improve our enrollments. All of those kinds of initiatives have disproportionately positive impacts on low-income students and students of color, so underrepresented students, so they contribute directly to our DEI goals. And then there's a handful of DEI kind of work that we have wanted and been thinking about doing and planning to do, including diversifying our general education curriculum, addressing issues of climate on our campus, et cetera. So those are the last category. I would say that in all of these and sort of identifying these issues, I don't want you to think that any of this is sort of just stuff we made up over the last few weeks. We've been working on all of these things for really the last 3 years, and in many cases more. These are priorities that have emerged through our conversations around system redesign and system redesign working groups. They've emerged through our executive leadership group and conversations that we've had in the General Assembly and with the administration. So the idea here is that we take this sort of putative allocation, we go back to the executive leadership group with input from the board and come back with a more detailed set of plans for, or detailed set of plans and budget for you to consider in October. So let me leave it there and Randy, turn it to you or back to you, Cindy, if that's okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Oh, Larry, sorry, apologize.
Quite all right, Dan.
I'll be happy to.
I was going to turn it over to Larry.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, Dan and Molly.
Chairman Skinner, we just do have a couple more slides that I can take the group through, if that's okay. Okay. Randy, if you want to advance. Great. So I did want to spend a couple minutes and go through some content on the state appropriation allocation, and then that will wrap up our committee in this agenda item. So if you could advance to the next slide. I do want to cover, for those who are new to the board, I want to review the fact that the appropriation has two elements to it. The first is for system-wide costs and initiatives, which are sometimes referred to as off the top. And the second is the distribution of the remaining appropriation directly to the universities, and that helps support their E&G and their academic activities. As we mentioned, for 21-22, we have received level funding at just over $477 million, and so that is what you're seeing here. So in terms of the off-the-top items, the detailed descriptions of each of these is provided in attachment 2 in the agenda packet. And I'll point out a couple of highlights, though, year over year. Before I do that, I want to mention that every effort was made to maintain the off-the-top expenses at the same level as the prior year to really continue to maximize the amount available for the university distribution. So there are 3 areas that I want to highlight specifically. First, we are phasing back in funding for internal audit. Last year, we were able to use funds remaining on hand as we made the adjustment to the outsource model and conducted a risk assessment. We paused somewhat the outsourced activities this most recent cycle due to COVID, but we're at a point now to re-engage internal audit across the system, and this funding allows those activities to begin. Internal audit is being funded, as you see here, at about 50% of what those historical levels were as we work and settle into this new delivery model. Secondly, I want to point out the Dixon University Center costs continue to be reduced year over year. With the Dixon Center facility up for sale, the academic programs there will be shifted to another suitable location in the region beginning in spring of 2022. So accordingly, you see those dollars are declining year over year. And finally, the other line item which differs from prior year is approximately $1 million for targeted university sustainability investments. You'll see in the last year, we had to have some dollars for university integration, but with other sources available, this creates some capacity for even more dollars to be directed to universities. And these can support them as they navigate circumstances such as declining enrollment, all while they have been taking very concerted steps to align their budgets through their sustainability work. And these types of needs have been discussed and presented between the Chancellor and ELG and will be finalized by that group shortly. So in totality, these changes allow the total appropriation available to universities to be also equal to last year at $471.7 million. And next, Randy, I'll speak a little further about the distribution. So in terms of the university distributions, as background, we have been operating with a frozen state appropriation distribution since the 2018-19 timeframe. Meaning that our universities have been receiving the same proportional allocation each year since that time. As part of redesign in 2019, the board charged the system with evaluating and revising the formula. During that time, our collective leadership, our redesign teams, they reviewed the formula, they considered the circumstances, and continue to recommend to the board to keep the distribution frozen in this immediate time as we work through our actions with sustainability and system redesign, so that we could provide stability for all during that time frame while a new formula was being contemplated. But that all being said, I do want to spend a few minutes reviewing the components of the existing approved formula that we have in place. As I mentioned, it's been a bit of time since we've followed that. So as you can see in front of you here, this formula has 4 elements that together consider both fixed and variable cost factors. The fixed costs, those help provide a base level of funding for all universities to assist them in covering their core costs with some differentiation based upon mission. And then the instruction and support program components, those consider enrollment, both enrollment overall as well as in the instruction area, some consideration to high cost program areas, for example, in the sciences and upper level curriculums. And then lastly, the plant component considers the physical campus needs and assigns funding based upon square footage. Next slide, Randy. So provided here for comparison are the data around these calculations and the recommended action for today. And I'll walk through this information sequentially. The first column shows what all universities would have been planning according to that static frozen approach that had been in place in recent years. And then the second column are the results of following the existing formula that I just walked through. And the third column shows the variance. In a nutshell, the differences here are really being driven by student enrollment and how that is considered within the formula. So if you focus on the 5 universities in red, those are the universities with shortfalls in a frozen distribution as compared to the formula. And you can see here that several of those are fairly sizable, and in total, the 5 reach 14.6 million. As the ELG evaluated this circumstance, there was across the board support for taking steps to address these shortfalls. And you can see the recommendation as is outlined in the starred column for approval restores 50% of the shortfalls to the 5 universities with gaps. And as with having the surge funding, we are able to then support universities who would otherwise lose funding. So essentially, surge funding enables those universities who be receiving less to not be negatively impacted. So just kind of in closing, as I noted, the action for approval today does reflect the president's recommendation to take this step for 21-22 as we work to transition ultimately to a new model, while at the same time staying aligned to the board's commitment to financial sustainability. So with that, I will turn it back to Chairman Skinner to review the motion, and we're also happy to take any questions.
And Mr. Chairman, as you take back over, let me just remind from a logistical perspective, especially for our new board members, that all board members are encouraged to engage during the committee for discussion now rather than later. That way we don't have to repeat this conversation later when the whole board takes it up for final consideration. Thank you, sir.
So if there are no additional comments, thank you so much, Molly. And that was very important information you just provided us with. As a reminder, I would like to note that the SERS distribution recommendation does not require board action, as the board previously charged the chancellor and the presidents to present the strategic utilization to the board annually. I would like the committee to consider the motion found on page 36 and 37 of your materials. Therefore, I move that the committee recommends the Board of Governors approve the allocation of funds from the system's fiscal year 2021 to 22 education and general appropriation as reflected in the attachment one in your materials. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
And Senator Martin has his hand up.
Senator Martin.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I'm going to be supporting this today, as I believe that this is moving in the right direction of treating our institutions as part of the system more equitably. But I really wanted to underscore the critical nature of, and it's appropriate that this slide is up, on the impact of what that frozen allocation model meant to so many of our institutions. It also underscores the importance of the action that was taken yesterday in terms of moving in the right direction with some of the integrating universities and hopefully a move towards sustainability. My fear, and it tends to be a growing concern with a lot of my colleagues in the General Assembly, that the longer that we are removed from a more equitable distribution to all of our institutions, that you're going to see many of our non-integrating universities, the East Stroudsburgs of the world, which probably most critically, Millersville, Shippensburg, Kutztown, Westchester, the impact would basically be slow walking them to a financial position that is not dissimilar from the institutions that we just spent yesterday trying to move in the right direction. So though we're moving in the right direction with this formula, this is probably going to be a continual topic of concern, especially for those institutions that are still not being made whole or not being able to be put in a position where they can do things to continue to try to keep their head above water or to meet the needs of their growth, perhaps, in certain institutions. So I just really want to underscore this slide and the importance of so many things that we're doing is so important. And I think I have one question related to that, and that is with the makeup of the 50% of this to the institutions that have not been getting the funding. What is the composition of the dollars used to make them whole? Am I to believe correctly that this is one-time money that's being supplanted into that to do that? So even from looking into the future, and I know I believe till maybe 2025 is some of the projections that we may not be able to get back to the fair funding formula, is that this is still at risk moving forward. And hopefully these funds and the follow through with the 50 million each of the 3 years, that we can get this more solidified to make these institutions whole. We cannot be, just in the name of systemness, for them to be hurting or move to a fiscal cliff is not fair or worthy of that group effort, in my opinion. So any comments on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think you have summarized one of the greatest challenges we face. I mean, it is associated with the fact that we're a single corporate structure. It also signifies this importance of the state's investment in the system. Just a point of clarification, I think you know this, but there are two sources. I mean, there are two sources of funding. The SERS funding is anticipated to be at about the $25 million level over the next 4 years. Molly can correct me if I'm wrong, and then it begins to taper off. And then obviously the investment from the General Assembly, which is anticipated 50 million this year, and then a further 150 over the next 2 million, 2 years. So that we have resources that we need to invest in sort of promoting and significantly improving our system's performance, while at the same time achieving a kind of financial stability that works for all of our universities. Yeah.
Important. And Daniel, I mean, you're the one that gets to come to the General Assembly, I believe, coming up soon for a joint hearing with the Probes and Education. And as you know, this is probably going to be one of the bigger topics of concern of where this goes in terms of making sure that we're not doing this at the expense of the health of the other institutions and their growth as well.
Yeah.
President Ferrantino has his hand up.
I just wanted to clarify that the change in the appropriation is a base budget change, movement of the base allocation to the schools. The 50% increase is a base budget increase. I hope I'm clarifying that correctly. I'm saying that to reassure myself also.
President Ferrantino, I can just jump in and verify that. That's correct. So as you look at that starred column for approval, Senator, you'll note, for example, for Westchester, the movement up from their frozen at 58 to a new base then of 62 for this given year. Where the one-time funding support is coming in is in that far column where universities who might then be, short dollars are getting assistance through that.
Governor Smith has his hand up.
Thank you. While it's not directly related to this budget question before us, this appropriations question before us, what is the prospective timeline for trying to develop a more equitable, as Senator Martin used the word, formula going forward? What's the timeline for that you expect? Or are we going to be visiting this same subject next year?
So my hope, I'm going to turn to Presidents Long and Driscoll on this because they were involved in the last formula. Our hope is to bring a formula for consideration. Obviously, we'll bring it in stages. I'm sure you can imagine having workshops around the formulas development and getting input, et cetera. But it would be, the hope would be to have it available for consideration and approval in July. That's a hope. I am told by Presidents Driscoll and Long, and please feel free to chime in, that last time it took 18 months. This is not an uncomplicated process, and obviously requires some pretty significant analytical work, but that's the outline timeline. I don't know, Presidents Driscoll and Long, if you wanted to add color commentary there.
Yeah, thank you, Chancellor. I would just add that President Long, in a previous position for him, and I served on the committee that developed the sort of current formula, if we can call it that. And it did take a significant amount of time to reevaluate and find the right model for the circumstances the system was in at the time. Things have changed a great deal since then. So it's not something to jump into lightly. It will take a bit of time. We can hope that we can get it done in the next year. As I said earlier to Senator Martin outside this meeting, presidents are going to be starting to talk about that work within the next couple of weeks to do the internal discussion amongst us that will hopefully set the base for the work that will come in the following months headed for next July.
Thank you. I just, if I could real quick, finish up my little questionnaire there. I appreciate it. I think a pressing for a timeline of that nature, next year at this time. Otherwise, we're going to just be debating the peripheries of this as opposed to getting at, the core. Two quick observations. One, I think, speaking solely for myself and my own experience, this is something that, we need to do our best work of governing on creating a formula because, and I hope no one takes this wrongly, it's just me, we really don't want the legislature to feel that they have to micromanage and appropriate that element of that deep into the PASHE budget. And second observation, the equitable, as I learned a long time ago with basic education funding equitable is one of those kind of smoky words. It's pretty, it's mysterious, but equity is in the eye of the beholder is something that someone told me 25 years ago. And it's funny, it kind of resonates over time. So I just leave you with that thought. Thank you.
And,
If I can add to President Driscoll and just a comment, I concur with him 100%. I think we spent the bulk of time 6 years ago or so on the elements or the core foundation of what the formula contains. And in that scenario, it was a base amount for the 12 institutions. At the time, I think it was 9.4 million, and the remaining amount was allocated based on size, essentially, enrollment. But it took us several months to get to that component to come up with that number using national data. So I think that will be a driving factor on how fast we can move this forward, is determining what the elements to make up the formula.
and Chair Shapiro has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You know, just as trying to lower it. Okay. Just so as general comment from a governance point of view, and I appreciate Governor Smith's remarks about that. I think it's first of all, I would urge, I understand how complicated this is, and it's really even more complicated because obviously of the very new and different circumstances in which we find ourselves, and having to factor in, you know, integrated universities into this, you know, adds a whole, you know, a whole dimension. But I would urge that, you know, we try to get this done expeditiously. I think it's important, and I think that it is a piece of redesign that's critical, and also demonstrates that we understand this balance between obviously making sure that none of our universities reach a precipice, as Senator Martin says, and also understanding that systemness priorities are important to maintain uppermost in mind. So a lot going on here. And with all that, I still urge expeditiousness in at least proceeding with this. I would also urge that as this process is set up and starts to unfold, that the board be kept informed and engaged. I would not like to see a situation, you know, where we're presented, even in a workshop 2 weeks or a month before the board meeting in July, and are dealing with it on that basis. I think because of the board's involvement in the system redesign, which may be a bit unusual, right? When you look at how state system boards especially get involved with things, we perhaps are a bit more active than would be typical. But this is such a critically important part of it that I would ask that that board input be built into the process.
And Representative Briggs.
Great. Thanks, Randy. I just wanted to follow up on what Speaker Smith and Senator Martin kind of were talking about. And when terms like fully funded or fair or equitable are used, this chart just reminds me, I don't need much reminding, but if we're going to be using one-time SERS savings to backfill the subsidy, we have to address the state allocation as a legislator. 471 million has been stagnant for a few years. This is a necessary step, and yesterday's plan, you know, there's going to be many of these steps, but you know, this isn't sustainable if we don't address our investment from the Commonwealth. So I think we all voted on the plan yesterday. In that plan says we will all advocate for increased investment. That is encouraging. I know there's a lot of talk about, recent talk about dealing with the debt situation, which is also encouraging. But this is, like I said, a necessary step into the direction towards fairness. I don't think this still is fair or full, but we will work there. But I do have a question for the Chancellor. On the pie chart, when you talked about the different pots and you mentioned marketing, and maybe I am combining a workshop briefing and this was recruitment. And I get how marketing can help towards recruitment, but I really hope that there is a very aggressive strategy. It's hard to recruit when you don't have the affordability pitch. That was, why a lot of us chose the system, was because it was the most affordable option. Marketing, billboards, digital marketing, all that stuff is nice, but I think there needs to be a discussion around kind of old school, campus to campus, ambassadors or recruiters or college fairs. I don't even know if they happen anymore, but I think we need to think about the best way to really, get to the students face to face and try to get them, it probably wouldn't be as, it would be cheaper than some of the higher level marketing strategies. But I just think as that's discussed, that would be an approach that I think would have to deal with our enrollment. I think that is a positive way. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about marketing or if it's premature.
No, they're all good points. I mean, and thank you for taking up actually between the several comments that have been made. We know we have a number of remaining steps in our work: debt relief, student affordability, enrollment management, which is marketing, and much more. So and they're critical. This is a portfolio approach to our getting to where we need to be for the people of Pennsylvania, and all of these things are part of that portfolio. I guess on the marketing specifically, it's very I have to be careful in talking about things like marketing and student success initiatives, because I don't want it ever to sound as if our universities aren't already doing a lot of that really good work. They are. And they're doing it in a very, very difficult environment where obviously we are challenged by any number of things, which we all know about. But I do want to acknowledge the good, hard work that our universities are doing in these areas, and the opportunity this affords is to leverage what is already in place and to strengthen it and to amplify it and to accelerate, but certainly never get in the way of the work universities are doing for themselves.
Representative Roy has his hand up.
Thank you. I think this is a good plan, and I think that we should do it. One thing I do want to point out is that when you look at the total dollar amount, it's been mentioned many times, if the state could give more money to the system, when you look at education spending, it's kind of weird. In Pennsylvania, our schools, our K through 12 schools, spend about $4,000 a year more per student than the national average. So by the time a student graduates from high school, there's been $52,000 more funding spent on that student than in the average state. Now, when you look at higher ed funding, we've all seen the numbers. Pennsylvania is towards the bottom of how much funding is per student. So I think what we in the legislature need to do, I'm not saying we need to cut K through 12 funding, but we just need to grow it at a slower rate and then see if we can increase the funding for higher ed. And but every year, K through 12 funding, that seems to be, the top priority of almost all letters and phone calls and meetings and stuff legislators go to. So much of it involves K through 12 education funding, and higher ed is almost an afterthought. I know that's not what people want to hear, but it's kind of like that. But anyways, going forward, I think the legislature, when they see things like universities having to have financial sustainability plans, the mergers that we did yesterday, I think more and more legislators are seeing that the system really is taking a lot of steps to become more efficient, to become more cost conscious, to do things more efficiently. So I really think that in future years, it's going to be easier for there to be increases in state funding for the system. But we do have to look at it. The state budget obviously funds a lot of things. There's human services, there's the court system, there's just agriculture stuff. There's just dozens or hundreds of different things that state government has to fund, and higher ed is only one of them. But I think the system is on the right road, and hopefully in the legislature, we can help out. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, there are no other hands raised.
Well, thank you all for your comments.
I'm sorry, there's Senator Martin.
Thank you. If you can go back to the slide with the distribution, just one question. I know we have different levels of sustainability for institutions. The one I was mainly curious about right now, namely because I know they've done a very good job over the years, at least from what I've seen and been told, related to fiscal management, and I think they had one of the lowest faculty to student ratios was East Stroudsburg. And I'm just noticing this on here. Now, obviously, I think they're kind of a zero-sum game, right? In terms of extra money this time, or 300, like, how is this? Do they look at this? Is this going to be a positive for them, given their current situations that that they're in, or do they look at a formula like this and say, this is going to drive us further to the edge?
President Long, did you want to chime in?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for that question. Any help, we'll take any help. And the philosophy we have at ESU, and we've maintained that for the past 8 years, is we're gonna make what we need to happen by making tough decisions that we have been. We've had one of the lowest or the highest, faculty student ratios in the system, being still one of the smallest schools. But that's because we work collaboratively with our faculty in making those decisions over the past 7 or so years. And we will continue to do that. It's not that we don't need the money, we need the money, but we also need to make the tough decisions with the cards that we're dealt. So we're going to take what we can get, and as my mother would say, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. So we're going to take what we can get, but we certainly could use much more, and we're looking forward to a formula change that will address everyone's needs equitably.
I appreciate that, and I think just in closing, I'd say I just don't want to make sure it does not go unnoticed. I know that there's going to be work moving forward between the presidents and others looking at how to do this formula. But as much focus as we've had, rightfully so, on the integrating universities, I do want to recognize the fact that the work that so many of the non-integrating schools, when I think of the restructuring done by IUP and other work throughout the other non-integrating schools who've been making a lot of tough decisions in face of also a decrease in their funding allocation from us. And so hopefully we keep moving to the part where we're rewarding their hard work as much as we can. So thank you for that opportunity.
And Mr. Chair, there are no other hands up right now.
Well, I'll just check again. Is there any additional discussion? If not, committee members, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Madam Chair, that concludes the work of the University Success Committee. I now turn the gavel back to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Skinner. Appreciate it. Okay, that was an excellent discussion, by the way. We are now going to move back into a full board format. So I will ask Teresa to take a roll call of the full board, please.
Sure, certainly. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Governor Bogle,
Here.
Representative Briggs,
Here.
Governor Gindelsberger,
Here.
Secretary Jones,
Here.
Senator Martin,
Here.
Governor Mazer, Governor Moskowitz,
Here.
Designee Tanya Garcia,
Here.
Representative Roy,
Here.
Governor Roberts,
Here.
Senator Schwank,
Here.
Governor Scott,
Here.
Chair Shapiro,
Here.
Governor Skinner,
Here.
Governor Smith,
Here.
Governor Washington,
Here.
Governor Weaver, Governor Yeomans,
Here.
Dr. Phillips.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, our next item on the agenda is about the non-discrimination policy update. So let me ask Andy Lehman, our Chief Counsel, and Susie Williamson, our Compliance Counsel, to provide an overview of this update on the policy. Andy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. I'm going to, first of all, as you know, I work with some very talented lawyers in my office, and the incredible group of individuals support many different divisions and functions. And today I'm going to introduce Susie Williamson. She is our compliance counsel, and she has worked diligently with others throughout the system and with the chancellor and the LG on revising the non-discrimination policy. So I don't believe this will be a long item, but it is a very important item. So with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney Williamson.
Thank you, Andy. So good morning, governors. I'm hoping this is a relatively non-controversial policy update and one that is, quite frankly, long overdue. The biggest changes to this policy really are clarifying the legally protected categories through legislative changes or case law clarifications that we should have in our non-discrimination policies. The other piece that is new to this non-discrimination policy is it does require the Chancellor's Office to publish a template policy that can be adapted or adopted by individual universities so that we are gaining more efficiencies and talking the same language when we gather as groups, and really being able to establish best practices across the 14 universities. Lastly, the other major change to the policy is eliminating the sort of hard or set timeline by which universities need to provide a copy of their policies to the Office of the Chancellor, and that is to allow for the shared governance process to take place at the individual university as they go through either an adoption or an adaptation of a template policy. So I will pause there. You've all had the opportunity to review the policy if there are any questions on it.
I don't see any hands right now, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Susie.
Okay, very good. So may I have a motion, please, that the Board of Governors approves the revision of policy 2009-03, non-discrimination policy as shown in the board documents. May I have a motion? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Are there any opposed? All right, very good. Next on the agenda, we are going to consider ratification of the committee actions over the past 2 days in one motion unless anyone asks that we separate them out. And so let's go over that again. They are items 10A, the student transfer policy update, item 11A, student trustee appointments, and 12A, fiscal year 2021-22 educational and general appropriation allocation. Let me first ask if anybody wants separate votes on any of these actions.
There are no hands, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So may I have a motion that the Board of Governors approves items 10A, 11A, and 12A as recommended by their respective committees?
So move.
In a second?
Second.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, thank you very much. The motion carries. Okay, our next and I believe possibly last item on the agenda are board officer elections. And so for this, I am going to hand the virtual gavel over to Jan Yeomans, Governor Jan Yeomans, to moderate this portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to moderate this portion of the meeting so we can conduct the election of officers. Now, as a reminder, our bylaws call for the annual election of officers at the third quarterly meeting each calendar year, which is today. So the terms of office for the officers begin the moment they're elected and continue until their successors are chosen and assume office. The officers of the Board of Governors include a chairperson and 2 vice chairpersons. In accordance with the provisions of Act 188, neither the governor, the Secretary of Education, their designees, nor any member of the General Assembly may be elected to these offices. To begin this process, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Governors elect the following members to serve as officers for the 2021 year. Cindy Shapira as chair, David Mazer as vice chair, and Sam Smith as second vice chair. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I hear no opposed, so I don't think we need a roll call. Thank you. Cindy, David, Sam, congratulations on your reelection. And I now yield the gavel back to the chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This is always the most awkward part of any quarterly board meeting for me. So all I will say is thank you very much for your trust in me and your trust in David and Sam. Sam, do you have anything that you would like to say?
Not really, Cindy, other than you can be proud of the work that you've done, and you deserve to be the chair. And nobody's going to want to be the chair because you're setting the bar a little too high in terms of the amount of time and effort you put into this job on a personal, on the personal side of our lives. As we are Board of Governors members, are volunteers here in that sense, and I think you can feel good about the work you've done. And I appreciate you welcoming me as part of your executive team. Thank you.
You're both entirely too humble.
Well, that's very, very kind. The only thing I'm going to ask is if I can run and get my husband in here and you can just like say that all over again. That would be really.
Don't push your luck. I mean, the guys have things in common too, so.
Yeah. Well, and my reason for asking is because then I can get out of making, the oatmeal during board meeting times in the morning. All right. Thank you again very much. Really appreciate it. My only comment is that I think that this is an amazing board. We come from, all different ways of becoming appointed, and we do not appoint each other. We have what we get, and every single person on here on this board rises to the highest level of putting aside personal interests, whatever they may be, and thinking about the good of the whole, the good of our students and our Commonwealth, and how we as a governing body can do our jobs as well as we can and truly move this system forward to greatness. So my thanks to all of you. You all are what makes this board really, really special. And it's such a privilege to work with all of you. So with that, I'm going to ask if there is any other business to come before the board. Okay.
There's one hand, Representative Briggs.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm not sure if this is new business, and I didn't want to talk about the non-discrimination policy beforehand, but just looking at it, it just makes me proud to be part of the system that has such an inclusive policy that all of our workers and students are treated fairly and equitably. So I just wanted to thank you for reminding me of that. It's in the legislature, sometimes it's things get distracted with politics, but I think that was a nice thing to do, and didn't want to say it beforehand because I don't want to start a debate. But thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And I think that's a great note to end on. So with that, the meeting is adjourned, and I will see you all back in October. Randy, we're going to be in person, right?
We are. This will be our first in-person meeting since the advent of the pandemic. And we are so grateful that President Wuba has agreed to host us at the Ware Center, which is their performing arts center in Lancaster. So this will be Millersville's hosting of the board meeting. If you recall, board members, and for the new ones, every October we've gotten on a pattern of moving to a new campus, new university as a host. So SHIP has hosted us, IUP, Kutztown. Now we're going to Millersville and their Ware Center in Lancaster. So Charisse will be sending board members all the information that they need to prepare for that October meeting. And we're excited about that. So thank you, Dr. Wuba.
Thank you, Dr. Wuba. And I can't imagine anything more beautiful. Lancaster in the fall. That's great. We'll look forward to you and all of your colleagues and students there. Okay, thank you very much. And the meeting is adjourned.